It's time for 515 Fantasy Football.
I know football. Are you ready for some football?
Domination on Sundays begins with listening to these guys on Thursdays.
You ready for this?
Over 40 years of fantasy football experience between them.
Yeah!
One is a proud veteran of the United States Marine Corps, husband and father, entering his 18th year of fantasy competition. Brian Eikenberry. The other, also a proud husband and father, is one of the winningest fantasy minds in the state. Celebrating 24 years of excellence. Andy Hall.
Let's get the game on!
It's showtime. The 515 Fantasy Football Show with your hosts, Andy Hall and Brian Eikenberry.
Welcome to Week 9, my friend. Very happy to have you aboard for this edition of the 515 Fantasy Football Show. I am Andy Hall. Sitting across from me, live from my home studio, is the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Brian Eikenberry. How are you, sir?
I am doing absolutely terrible. I am not even listening to my own advice. I got swept last week, and I got to get back to the drawing board.
Yeah, it's a smart thing to be genuine in your fantasy advice. And by that, I mean when you give others advice, it is the advice that you would also follow.
Yeah, I got bit by the injury bug, but I was giving the best advice that I could, but I was making risky plays when I had a comfortable lead at 5-2. I was making risky plays on my own roster when I shouldn't have been. I should have been doing the right thing instead of trying to be sneaky, and I got snuck.
You know, early in the season we say don't overreact. This part of the season is where you don't want to overthink things.
Yeah, and that's what I was doing. I was tinkering. Tinker stinker time.
Heavy hearts this week as our community lost 2 local police officers yesterday in an ambush-style shooting that resulted in both men losing their lives. I'd like to dedicate this week's show to the memory of Sergeant Tony Beminio of the Des Moines Police Department and Officer Justin Martin of the Urbandale Police Department. Our thoughts and prayers are with the families of both and all their loved ones during this difficult time. We invite you to be a part of our online community on Facebook, 515 Fantasy Football, on Twitter at 515 Fantasy, and online at espndesmoines.com, where throughout the course of a week leading up to games, we offer insight, advice as you make adjustments to your roster, and reminder, our guarantee, unlike so many of those so-called experts in the fantasy game, we will never ignore you. You reach out to us, we respond. That's how it works, 100% of the time. Over the next 2 hours, Brian and I will grade all the fantasy-relevant players. We'll break down each of this week's matchups from a statistical angle. For those of you that are in need of a dart throw, another round of bargain bin coming up later on in the show. 1 quarterback, 1 running back, 1 pass catcher, chances are, available now on your waiver wire. Throw them in and expect a decent amount of fantasy production from. Pop quiz answering 3 of fantasy's toughest questions, and the Flea flicker will wrap things up. But we begin, as we always do, with some headlines of fantasy note. Titans wide receiver Andre Johnson announced his retirement on Monday. A fantastic career that could result in a Hall of Fame nomination.
Yeah, absolutely. He had some massive stud years. What was he, 7-time Pro Bowler?
Boy, if that...
5 or 7, somewhere right in there. I mean, he racked them up pretty good. Sad to see him go out this way, though.
It really is. But it happens to all of them, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. You got to get old at some point.
On the other side of the coin, Percy Harvin announced he is coming out of retirement to sign with the Buffalo Bills.
Not on my waiver wire, as a matter of fact.
I'm going to file that under players I couldn't care less about.
Agreed.
Vikings offensive coordinator Norv Turner resigned on Wednesday. Pat Shurmur will take over play calling duties. We'll talk about that a little later on in the show because it's pretty significant. Running back Jerick McKinnon, likely to play Sunday after being banged up and missing last week's game. Chiefs running back Jamal Charles, he has been placed on IR, Brian.
Whoops. Looks like my trade with him and T.Y. Hilton did not work out the way I intended it to.
Not at all. And if people drafted Jamal Charles in the second round of their fantasy drafts, oh, that hurts.
Yeah.
Nick Foles will start at quarterback this week, by the way, for the Chiefs. Running back Spencer Ware is in the league's concussion protocol, likely to sit out Week 9. That means a lot of Charkandrick West. Head coach Rex Ryan, hopeful running back LaShawn McCoy will return to practice for the Bills on Thursday. We'll keep an eye on that injury report. Colts wide receiver T.Y. Hilton did not practice Wednesday. He's got a hamstring issue. Ravens wide receiver Steve Smith also did not practice Wednesday. He's, of course, got the ankle issue. Eagles head coach Doug Peterson evaluating his running back situation, looking to be a committee of Ryan Matthews and Darren Sproles going forward.
I think it's all Sproles all the time.
Well, Peterson came out today and said Matthews is still the starter.
Meh.
You
He
think
was a
that's
starter. He was a starter last week, and Sproles had 20-some touches,
So,
18.
Yeah, if you missed it, Matthews had an early fumble, was benched essentially for the rest of the game. They gave Sproles all the work.
Oh man,
and he looked
shined.
pretty good doing it too. Falcons head coach Dan Quinn confirmed rookie tight end Austin Hooper gets the start in tonight's Thursday night football game. Running back Tevin Coleman, tight end Jacob Tamme already ruled out for tonight's game. Packers released running back Niall Davis, who went on a little world tour there, signed with the New York Jets for about 3 hours before they dropped him.
Do you at least get prorated some cash? I mean, he was probably on a plane and then got the text alert through a sat phone or something and was like, actually, if you can turn around, go ahead and do so now.
Boy, it's just awful. Don Jackson, Ty Montgomery, James Starks when he's healthy. That Green Bay backfield's kind of a mess. Wide receiver Randall Cobb limited at practice on Wednesday, a hamstring, and we're going to have to keep a real close eye on that because he could miss another week's worth of work. Broncos head coach Gary Kubiak alluded to some frustration with quarterback Trevor Siemian at his press conference on Sunday. Siemian's on a short leash, Brian, and if at any point Kubiak wants to pull him, he's got that rookie Paxton Lynch ready to go.
Yeah, I think they've been waiting for an opportunity, not wanting to make the change, but I think they're prepared to do so.
Running back Devontae Booker is back at practice this week, should play on Sunday. Sounds like that was just a minor hiccup there last weekend with the shoulder.
Yeah, and we talked about this at length. Shoulders are touchy, but it looks like he's good to go, so fire in the hole.
I'd rather have a guy have a banged-up shoulder than a hurt toe.
Turf toe, dude, is legit.
It really is.
It sounds stupid, but it's like, why?
They can't cut on it.
They miss an entire season because of it.
It's true. Chargers wide receiver Travis Benjamin seeking a second opinion on his PCL strain. Still got some pain going on there and looking like he isn't going to play this weekend.
Rub it in the dirt, son.
Cardinals head coach Bruce, get off my lawn. Arians confirmed that wide receiver J.J. Nelson is now a starter. The Cardinals, of course, are on bye this week, but this means doom and gloom for Michael Floyd, does it not?
Yeah, I think so. As long as my boy Fitz keeps getting balls, I'll be happy.
That's going to happen. D-back Tyrann Mathieu, and of course we're talking about the Honey Badger here, expected to miss 3 to 6 weeks with a separated shoulder. This guy just can't stay healthy.
It sucks, too, because he was making such a personal turn into being a model athlete and a role model, and he was doing really good. And when people make that turn, you really want them to do good, and now he's just getting 2 injuries now. Recent.
You know who I always thought he had potential to become like?
Deion Sanders.
No, I was thinking more Troy Polamalu.
Yeah, I guess so.
If he had long hair, he'd
I
be
would say
Troy
if
Polamalu.
he had Pert Plus.
Pert Plus. That's what he needs too, huh? Or was it Pert Plus or Head and Shoulders?
Head and Shoulders.
That's right. Bucks running back Jacquizz Rodgers spotted with his left foot in a walking boot following Sunday's game. Antone Smith likely to get the majority of the work on Sunday with Peyton Barber mixing in. Although I've heard experts, quote-unquote experts in other places, claim that Peyton Barber is actually the guy you want to own and Smith will just mix in and maybe...
Which is why you have him now.
I don't know. I say Smith is the guy to own. He's facing his former team, and, well, maybe we'll just save that till we get to the matchups because revenge factor.
Wah, wah.
Browns rookie wide receiver Corey Coleman cleared to practice in full, which is great news. What's not so great is that Cody Kessler will start at quarterback if medically cleared by this weekend. What the hell are the Browns doing?
Why? I don't know if that's a diversion or not, but it's a terrible idea.
Josh McCown is clearly the best chance to win for the Browns. And I think if they do put Kessler under center, honestly, what they're really doing is tanking the season.
Yeah, 100%. Hey, join the 0-16 club, my friends.
Here's what I really think about the Browns, though, is you bring Corey Coleman back, you have Josh McCown under center. You've got Terrell Pryor when he's healthy, and by the way, he's still nursing a sore hamstring. But you have a good running game, good offensive line, so your quarterback's protected, your running backs are pretty decent. You've got Crowell, who's the Thunder guy. You've got Duke Johnson, the pass catcher, and the Lightning guy. You've got Pryor, Coleman, and Barnidge to throw to.
Make a run. Win one game, would you?
That's actually a pretty good offense if they're all healthy, don't you think?
I would assume that you would want to win at least one game for your fans, but whatever.
Terrell Pryor did sit out practice on Wednesday with that hamstring, by the way. Steelers quarterback Ben Roethlisberger participating in practice this week. He may actually play on Sunday.
I hope so.
I do too. Landry Jones, I just can't take any more of that.
As Antonio Brown owner, I need Roethlisberger to play.
Yeah, I own Brown in one of my leagues.
Yes.
And spent a lot of money on him.
Yes, you did.
So I can't afford this mediocre crap. The Saints will reportedly employ a committee backfield no matter who starts going forward. I think Tim Hightower is probably the likely candidate there, and that's another situation we'll talk about a little later on in the show. Cowboys owner Jerry Jones said Dak Prescott will remain the team's starter Week 9. No surprise there. Don't want to mess with that chemistry.
No, they're not going to push Romo back in. Secretly, he probably doesn't want Romo to come back.
Another heavy week on the buys. 6 teams on bye this week, so we've got some extra time to play with, but we are going to jump right into the matchups here shortly. Stick around. This is the 515 Fantasy Football Show on 1350 AM ESPN Radio. This is the 515 Fantasy Football Show on 1350 AM ESPN Radio in Des Moines, Iowa. Our radio home each and every Thursday between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. You might be listening to us via iTunes or Stitcher or online at espndesmoines.com. No matter how you found the show, we really appreciate you checking us out. Brian and I put hours and hours and hours of research in every week to make sure that the intel we're sharing with you week to week is the best intel you can find anywhere.
And also, subsequently, we were looking for an intern who was willing to work for peanuts.
We have lots of peanuts. You like peanuts? Anyway, let's begin with the matchup, shall we? Thursday Night Football tonight, Atlanta, Tampa Bay. Begin with the Falcons, and quarterback Matt Ryan gets an A grade, has averaged over 290 passing yards in his last 7 meetings against Tampa, has thrown a total of 14 touchdowns, only 4 INTs over that span. The Bucs are a middle-of-the-road pass defense, giving up 275 passing yards per game, have allowed 14 passing scores, including 5 to Oakland's Derek Carr last week, who also, by the way, threw for over 500 yards.
50-bagger.
Dang. Running back Devontae Freeman, I'll give a B grade to. When he gets the majority of the touches against defenses that rank lower than 10th against the run, he's almost always a solid play. Tampa ranks 18th in yards allowed on the ground, have yielded a total of 7 rushing scores on the season. Freeman has yet to score against them, but if he gets the volume, I see him in the end zone at least once here. Good news for Freeman owners. Coleman has already been ruled out, as I said in headlines. The wide receivers, Julio Jones, an A grade. If Amari Cooper can catch 12 passes for 173 yards and a score against these Bucs, which happened last week, imagine what Jones could be capable of following a tough outing against the Packers in Week 8. It should be noted he's operating at less than 100%, but even a less than 100% Julio Jones is still pretty good.
Still pretty good.
Don't want him in your lineup. Mohamed Sanu, I'll give a B grade to here. Secondary receivers typically do well against Tampa, including Michael Crabtree, who caught 8 passes for 108 yards last week. Both Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders scored against the Bucs in Week 4. Tavon Austin and Brian Quick both scored against the Bucs in Week 3. Michael Floyd, John Brown also in Week 2. So Mohamed Sanu in play. Austin Hooper, your starting tight end, a B grade. Tampa has been, they've given up some big days to opposing tight ends, including a score to Oakland's Clive Walford back in Week 8. Greg Olsen caught 9 passes for 181 yards back in Week 5, so I like Hooper a little bit here too. Over to the Bucs side, quarterback Jameis Winston, a B+. Back in Week 1 in Atlanta, Winston threw for 281 yards and 4 touchdowns, and in 2 games last season, though he didn't light the fantasy world on fire with his passing numbers, he did run 2 touchdowns in. I think both opportunities will be in play this week at home. Antone Smith, a B-, with Doug Martin still on the mend, Jacquizz Rodgers sporting a walking boot following last week's OT loss to the Raiders. It is Smith that most likely gets the majority of the backfield work, at least in my opinion. The former Falcon is best known for his long touchdowns, whether they be via the ground or the air. Atlanta is a decent run defense, allowing 4 yards per carry, less than 100 yards per game, roughly 1 touchdown per week on the ground. Mike Evans, an A grade. Considering the target volume, he's a great play whether he reaches the end zone or not, and in recent history, he hasn't had a problem scoring, even with Desmond Trufant shadowing him more often than not. In 3 of his 4 head-to-head matchups with the Falcons, he has hit pay dirt. Russell Shepard is out this week. From what I am reading, he's severely banged up. So Russell Shepard, you cannot count on in your lineup. Adam Humphries gets a C grade here, a dart throw at best. Humphries benefits your lineup only when the Bucs are in pass-heavy mode, which theoretically could be this week. I'm going to throw Cecil Shorts in as a flyer as well, a C grade this week, and we'll talk more about him later in the show. Tight end Cameron Brate, a B. Nearly every game this season, he's gotten at least one red zone target, capitalizing on a total of 3 over the course of this season. Mid-tier option at the tight end position this week against a Falcons defense that will have their hands full with those wide receivers.
On to the Lions-Vikings. Quarterback Matt Stafford, he's going to get a B. Through 8, he is maintaining his 4-to-1 touchdown-to-interception ratio. And even in bad games, he has low touchdowns with no turnovers. So his bad games aren't hurting you as much in fantasy football. I have to be wondering if he's going to be able to exploit the Vikings secondary that's on its heels after 2 straight losses. Can they deliver the third?
They're playing at home.
So, yes.
They're tough. They're angry. They're going to come back.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, absolutely. Theo Riddick, B-. Riddick has an opportunity to be the best player for the Lions this week. While I don't expect much on the ground, I believe his pass catching will get him an additional 5 receptions as he has 267 and 4 touchdowns through the air. Wide receiver Golden Tate's going to get a B grade as well. Ever since his benching, he has become a wide receiver 2 in your lineup. Expect him to stay there. Over the last 3, he has 300 yards and a touchdown and likely will not pull Xavier Rhodes, so Tate is a good start to me. Wide receiver Marvin Jones, B-. He, on the other hand, will pull that coverage and has slipped a little in recent weeks coming off his roaring start. Yeah, see what I did there? Roaring start.
Oh, I thought because you said reeks instead of weeks. No,
roaring start.
I'm just surprised. A B- is still a pretty good grade considering a tough matchup. I wouldn't be giving him a B-.
Well, they're gonna be chucking the ball. Stafford's gonna throw it 40-45 times. So
it's the difference between a Vikings fan and a Lions fan.
Right.
How we see this game going.
Wide receiver Anquan Bolden. So just for the record, I bet it's like 13-10.
Might be, considering the problems that the Vikings have had offensively and the fact that defense is going to come in angry to this game and want to manhandle the Lions.
Whoever wins, it's going to be within 3.
It'll be whichever kicker can actually make a field goal.
That was the problem last week, maybe. Anquan Bolden's going to get a C. If you start Bolden this week, you're looking for that 5-yard touchdown slant that he's always seems to snag. The one precaution here, I do have Bolden since we are in BYE-Pocalypse. Remember, Ebron is back now. So Bolden's numbers from, anywhere from 5 weeks ago up until 2 weeks ago have been skewed because of Ebron's absence. So with him back, you have to think he's going to get at least one of those touchdown looks and some of those first down catches. So Ebron came back. He had 79 yards receiving last week, so he should be a good start in your tight end lineup. I did give him a C+, however. Quarterback Sam Bradford, B-. Offensive line struggling here. Last week was just terrible to watch. It was a massacre on that offensive line. Oh, and not to mention his offensive coordinator resigned out of the blue in the middle of the week. Shouldn't affect this game too much. Where I do expect to see it affecting is the next week. They've already got the game plan built for this week, so they've already been working on it. So I wouldn't expect it to be too big of a deal this week. Next week, that's when I'd start being concerned.
I have some fun intel to share with you later.
Good. We're going to have fun with that. Running back Jerick McKinnon, whoever it is, Asiata, who's it going to be this week?
It's McKinnon, probably.
Yeah, well, I'm going to give a B to McKinnon. He's playing against the Lions. I can't imagine Asiata just fades into the background, but who knows? Lions are giving up 117 on the ground, so I would feel confident starting McKinnon in BYE-Pocalypse. Stephon Diggs, C+, Adam Thielen, C+. Thielen, whatever. Why do you got these names?
Get the names right, will you?
These guys are not on the Vikings roster. I'm
you
not
don't even butchering the Lions' names.
No, I don't, actually.
Ghoulie Teat.
Yeah. So my problem with the Vikings receivers this week is because of that offensive line issue. The Lions have a lot of strength and veteran leadership up front. So they're going to be pressing. It's going to be hard to get a lengthy pass out. So any Vikings wide receiver this week, start at caution. However, if you do happen to own Kyle Rudolph or can get him in a quick trade, please do so now. A start of the week, possibly. Lions get shredded by the tight end. They've given up about 43 touchdowns to them this year. And, oh, by the way, Rudolph is a former Pro Bowler, so there's that too. I would start Rudolph in any wide receiver or flex spot on the board.
I like that Mitchell Stouffer, that quarterback for Detroit.
Yeah.
Mitchell Stouffer, he's great. Philadelphia at the New York Giants. For the Eagles, quarterback Carson Wentz, a C+. The term game manager comes to mind when I think of Wentz. He's averaging around 16 fantasy points per game through 7 contests, but has been trending down sharply in his last 3, facing the Redskins, Vikings, and Cowboys, where he only averaged 9.9 fantasy points. The Giants give up 267 passing yards per game, but have only allowed 7 touchdowns to opposing quarterbacks, with 6 INTs on the season. Darren Sproles, a B grade here, faces a tough Giants front 7 that gives up only 3.6 yards per carry and has only allowed 5 rushing scores total on the season. Where I really like him is in the short passing game, and Sproles has enough quicks to make him a worthwhile flex start with upside this week. Ryan Matthews I'm putting on the bench. I don't think he can be trusted after last week's benching. Doug Peterson says he's still the starter, but for how long? Jordan Matthews, a B grade, saw 14 targets last Sunday night, found the end zone against a Cowboys secondary that is comparable to the Giants against the pass. Zach Ertz, a C+. The Giants are usually very solid against opposing tight ends. Ertz is in play, barely here. On the Giants side, quarterback Eli Manning I'm putting on the bench. It's been a rough year for Eli. Won't get any easier against the league's third best pass defense that puts an incredible amount of pressure on opposing quarterbacks, allows only 214 passing yards per game. We've talked about it before. It's like the Vikings and the Broncos. Everybody talks about those two teams and their prowess against the pass. The Eagles are actually right there.
Yeah, they're pretty awesome.
Rashad Jennings, a C grade. The Eagles are a very average run defense, but have given up only 4 rushing scores on the year. Jennings is not the answer here. Odell Beckham, a C+. Someone will catch some passes on Sunday, that's for sure. Beckham is a game breaker, but if Manning isn't given any time in the pocket, there won't be anything available down the field. So Beckham really can't hurt you all that bad. Sterling Shepard, Victor Cruz, all on the bench. Tight end Larry Donnell as well. The Eagles are a tight end's worst nightmare. By the way, going back to your Vikings-Lions matchup there real quick, do you know how many tight end scores the Vikings have allowed thus far this season?
1.
0.
Well,
they're the
prepare to be
only.
broken.
I think they're the only team in the league that has yet to allow a tight end score.
Well, they were allowing them to everybody else last week.
Well, that's true. Well, it's not to say they don't give up chunk yardage plays, because that's clearly the case. And that Chicago game, boy, that
would have been frustrating. I've had games like that, obviously being a Lions fan.
I mean, I was right up until kickoff. I was, throwing some razz at some of my buddies that are Bears fans, and they even admitted, this is going to be bad. We know it's going to be bad. Normally, they're pretty loudmouthed, my Bears friends, but they were pretty subdued. And then, of course, the game was over, and there was, no gloating whatsoever. I'm like...
It was crazy.
So I texted some of my buddies and was like, you watched the game, right? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, you saw that you guys won, right?
We feel sorry for you.
I was waiting for some trash talk, and I didn't get any of it. And the reason is because, like you said, they're expecting that this was just kind of a one-off deal, and they're not going to get too excited because the team still sucks.
Yeah, I've been there, done that many times, trust me.
All that means is your Vikings aren't nearly as good as you thought they were. That's what they're telling me.
Yeah, well, I mean, 2-game losing streak is kind of important. When you were 5-0, now you've dropped 2. Yikes.
You want to know something? And we're going to talk about it later in the show, because I have some very, very intriguing intel about the Vikings situation with the OC and everything else, and why the Vikings were doing so great and now aren't anymore.
Is this top secret info?
It's not top secret, but not a lot of people are talking about it.
Is it HGH?
No. I will say this real quick before we go to break. We got more matchups still to come, by the way. I'm going to say this real quick. I want to save it. No, it's good. I'm going to save it for later. Okay?
Juicy.
You're going to have to stick around, okay? Keep listening. This is the 515 Fantasy Football Show on 1350 AM ESPN Radio. You are listening to the 515 Fantasy Football Show on 1350 AM ESPN Radio in Des Moines, Iowa. Also on iTunes, on Stitcher, and online at espndesmoines.com. I'm Andy Hall. That's Brian Eikenberry. We can't thank you enough for checking our show out as we continue the Week 9 matchups. And Brian.
Jets-Dolphins, quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick, C+. For those feeling like this may be a Fitz resurgence, I caution you. He still has more interceptions than he does touchdowns, so simmer down. Plus, the Fins have the 10th best pass defense. We had a saying last year that if you start a Jet, you need all 3 to be on the field. Fitz, Marshall, and Decker.
Yeah, that went back to last year.
Yeah, and it's still true now. So if all three of those guys aren't on the field, don't start Fitzpatrick.
Of course, Ivory was part of that formula last year too, and now he's gone.
Right.
So
don't start a Jet is what I'm saying. Well,
got it.
Fitz. So you got it. A Jet I would start this week, running back Matt Forte, 700 combined yards, 7 touchdowns, and I would expect him to do the same for another 100 combined and a touchdown against the extremely porous and Dominican Sue-led Dolphins defense.
It's just love to jam that knife in.
Yeah, I
don't
do.
you?
Thanks for taking it. Running back Bilal Powell, B-. Giving Forte a few breathers here. He should be able to rip off a few of his own. So if you are in a bad situation, I don't think Bilal Powell is a bad start here with a B-. Wide receiver Brandon Marshall is getting a B. Marshall is the victim of everyone else around him. He's drawing doubles and trips. You can see his production with no Decker. Through 8 games, he has 540 yards and 2 touchdowns. So it's affecting Marshall. Wide receiver Quincy Enunwa, B+. Teams seem to be making Fitz beat them with Enunwa, as he has 502 yards and 3 touchdowns. So if you look at his production compared to Marshall, they're right neck and neck. So that's something to kind of consider. If you're thinking of starting Enunwa or Marshall, what am I going to do here? I like Enunwa better than Marshall in this matchup. And obviously, any tight end here is not a good go. On the Fin side of the ball, quarterback Ryan Tannehill, B+. Coming off rest, facing the worst pass defense in the league, giving up 289 yards per game, Tannehill has a good chance to put up big numbers at home. I would expect 250-2, but could see 303 if the Jets are playing the run tough. Running back Jay Ajayi is getting a B. I wanted to give Ajayi a bigger grade, but the Jets still hold 71 yards per game on the ground. Even if he is getting it done, it's probably going to be with caught passes, maybe around 70, 80 yards on the ground. He does have 6 yards per carry, I believe, right around in there somewhere. Pretty high, but it's still that Jets run, so be careful. Wide receiver Jarvis Landry, B+, because of his consistent abilities to get targets, averaged nearly 7 catches per game. If you roll with Landry, it's going to be yardage and opportunity. If you roll with Stills, who's going to get a B, you're looking for that big play explosion, as he averages just over 2 catches per game, but he has 3 touchdowns and nearly 20 yards per catch. So what I like doing is I like putting these two guys against each other. Devontae Parker, just for you, I'm going to give him a B-. He gets the scraps, but he is gaining in production and momentum.
Yeah, like I said, he would. Aren't you glad you pumped the brakes on Austin Seferian-Jenkins, by the way?
Wow. Swing and a miss there.
I called that one all the way. Jacksonville at Kansas City. Start with the Jags and quarterback Blake Bortles, a C+. Something clearly isn't right with Bortles, whether it's mechanics or not. Despite a 337-yard, 3-touchdown performance last Thursday night, I'm not trusting him near my starting lineup this week against a Chiefs defense that has allowed 13 passing touchdowns on the season but continues to be one of the most opportunistic units, a league most 11 INTs. If you're in a pinch during the BYE-Pocalypse, he's serviceable at best, I guess. TJ Yeldon, a C grade. He's a yardage threat against a Chiefs defense that gives up 4.5 yards per carry on average and about 113 rushing yards per game. Chris Ivory, though, I'm leaving on the bench, was an afterthought in last week's loss to Tennessee, who are 9th in yards allowed and have only allowed 3 rushing scores on the season. Kansas City is relatively comparable, giving up more yardage to opposing backs, but also giving up only 3 rushing touchdowns thus far in 2016. Allen Robinson, a B grade, with an average of over 257 receiving yards to go around per game on average. One would think whatever slump A-Rob has been in should end this week. The Chiefs take a lot of chances in coverage, which results in a lot of INTs for the Jags quarterback Bortles, but can also result in some long gains for the pass catchers if they whiff. Allen Hurns, a B-, 29 targets in the past 3 games, coming off a 7-reception, 98-yard game with a score last Thursday night. I kind of like him again. Marquise Lee, I'm leaving on the bench. He saw only 3 targets in Week 8. He's on the down trend. Over to the Chiefs, quarterback Alex Smith, a B-. Assuming he's cleared to play this Sunday, he's a mid-tier quarterback, too, against a much-improved Jags secondary that ranks 8th in yards allowed via the air, has given up 11 touchdowns on the season. Actually, scratch that. The latest headline I just saw is that Alex Smith is sitting out and Nick Foles gets the start. Guess what? Nick Foles is nothing more than just a dart throw at the quarterback position, so I'd probably just leave him on the bench. Charkandrick West, a B+. Jacksonville doesn't give up a lot of big yardage plays on the ground, but since West is likely to see a sizable amount of volume with Ware and Charles out on Sunday. We expect good numbers out of him with some touchdown upside. The Jags have given up 9 rushing scores this season. Tyreek Hill, a B-, a deep threat with speed and elusiveness. Hill brought in 5 of 6 targets last week for 98 yards and a score. That's his 4th of the season, by the way, leading the Chiefs receivers. Jeremy Maclin, a C+. He saw 10 targets in last week's win over the Colts, but only hauled in 3 receptions for 43 yards. Did reach the end zone for the first time since week 1, but his inconsistent target volume and the bad percentage of receptions and targets makes him only a flex play at best here. Travis Kelce, an A-, should follow up last week's big day with something comparable against one of the worst defenses in the league against opposing tight ends.
On to the Cowboys-Browns. Quarterback Dak Prescott's going to get a B. He gets another nod from Jerry Jones, and at this point you have to wonder if they are taking it extra slow with Romo because things are going so well without him. He wins football games. He's just not quite the fantasy football quarterback you want to see yet, averaging just under 2 touchdowns a game and only has 1,700 yards. Running back Ezekiel Elliott, A. Can he break 200 yards this game? I would expect him to get pulled in the fourth quarter if the Cowboys have a massive lead and the number 1 rushing offense meets the number 31 rushing defense. So take that over to Alfred Morris. I'm going to give him a C+ just because I do see a point where Elliott may get pulled late in the game. If he's up so high and they're just running all over him, I could definitely see some game time for Alfred Morris. So just don't get crazy yet. Don't worry about that potential suspension either. Wide receiver Dez Bryant, B+. I love Dez, but the thing that scares me is Dak getting it downfield. I was proven wrong last week as he had 119 yards and a touchdown, so I should probably shut my mouth and just, eat that crow. But one thing is for sure, Dez is back. He's angry, and it's a terrible pass defense. Wide receiver Terrence Williams, C+. Not sure how he's still the number 2, but it's just because of his size, not his ability. Through 7 games, he has 330 yards and a touchdown. Cole Beasley, on the other hand, B-. Beasley playing the slot. He gets plenty of opportunities, and hopefully will make the best of it. So I think he's a good BYE-Pocalypse start, and use that flex option wisely and someone who has a chemistry with a quarterback. Tight end Jason Witten, D. Old age has finally caught up with him, and this is his swan song. He is the worst pass catcher on the team for probably the first time in about 13 years.
I'm going to disagree with you on the Witten call. I actually picked him up in one of my leagues this week because of the bye weeks. And I figure that he's going to be a pretty good play. Cleveland, first of all, is terrible against opposing tight ends.
Cleveland's terrible against everybody.
That's true. Second of all, Jason Witten all of a sudden becomes relevant again with that wide open touchdown catch he just had recently on Sunday. Was it Sunday Night Football where he caught that game winner?
Yeah, I don't get too excited though.
Just saying, as a nice bye week fill-in, if he was sitting on your waiver wire as he was in my league for some reason, I was like, you know what? I kind of like him this week. I'm going to grab him.
All right. Well, send your complaints to Andy Hall. Thank you very much.
I'm just saying, man, if you need somebody, sometimes you gotta take a chance. I'd rather take Jason Witten than Eric Ebron this week.
I would rather take Cole Beasley over Jason Witten.
I'm not going to disagree there. Didn't say anything about Beasley, but because he's kind of more of a possession guy, and you figure Beasley's, that quick guy over the middle, whereas Dez Bryant will be down the sidelines, more deeper patterns. And then Terrence Williams, he's a guy that just, every once in a while makes an appearance. But, yeah, I was kind of hoping you'd get in a fight with me there.
Oh, I'm just picking away.
When I said
wasting our time, what I got, 15 seconds left?
I would take Jason Witten over Eric Ebron.
No, I totally let that one go because
Eric Ebron against the Vikings defense that is yet to allow
that's
a
why
tight
I gave
end
him
touchdown.
a C+.
Yeah.
On the Browns side, Josh McCown, B-. If he goes, if the other guy goes,
Cody Kessler.
Just don't. This stuff makes me very angry. The Crow, Duke Johnson, they're both getting B-. 10th best run defense they're going against. Not sure how it's going to play out because the quarterback plays into a lot. But if it's McCown, I like Crow a little bit over Duke Johnson. Corey Coleman, Terrell Pryor, B and B+ respectively. When Terrell Pryor is healthy, he's all over the place. And Corey Coleman, when healthy, 24 yards per catch. Gary Barnidge, B-.
There you go, my friend.
Nailed it.
He really did. Stick around. We do have more matchups still to come. The pop quiz is looming as well, just 2 segments away. You are listening to the 515 Fantasy Football Show. We can't thank you enough for it. This is 1350 AM, ESPN Radio, Des Moines, Iowa. This is the 515 Fantasy Football Show, heard each and every Thursday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. on 1350 AM, ESPN Radio in Des Moines, Iowa. We're also on iTunes, on Stitcher, and online at espndesmoines.com. Also, a quick shout-out to our friends at the SleeperBot app, where Brian and I both contribute some stuff, fantasy analysis from time to time on breaking news, and we also do a Sunday segment there where we answer tough questions, start, sit type stuff. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, if you're ever thinking about, it's Sunday, 11 Central, 12 Eastern, wherever you might be listening to, and you're going, God, I wish I could really get a hold of these guys for some rapid-fire questions, hit us up on the Sleeper Bot in the podcast section. There'll be some threads up there. Look for the one that says 515 Fantasy Football and hop in and pop a question on there. We'll get to you.
If you haven't downloaded that SleeperBot app yet, something's wrong with you.
I agree.
It's giving you the competitive advantage. Why wouldn't you want that? More matchups. Pittsburgh at Baltimore for the Steelers. If Big Ben gets the start, he's a B grade, considering Bell will likely get a lot of carries. Baltimore, pretty damn good defense, especially at home, ranking in the top 5 against the run and the pass. If Landry Jones goes, he's on the bench, obviously. Le'Veon Bell, a B+. Tough sledding against a Ravens defense that allows a paltry 3.5 yards per carry, less than 82 yards per game on average, and have given up only a total of 3 rushing scores all season. Bell is a volume play, considering he can also contribute via the pass. And hey, if Matt Forte can rush for 100 yards and a score as he did in Week 7, Bell can do it also. Antonio Brown, a B grade. If Big Ben starts, Brown is a wide receiver 2 with upside this week. If Jones, downgrade Brown to a C+. Sammy Coates, a C+, unless Jones starts, in which case I'm keeping him on the bench. Marcus Wheaton, already on the bench. We're not sure about that shoulder just yet, just like Brown. And like Brown and Coates, a lot more in the Steelers' passing game. Jesse James, a C grade. Chances are you can probably find a better option on your waiver wire. Ladarius Green, a bench, until we can see how the snaps are split with James and what his potential usage will be. He's not worth plugging in just yet. For the Ravens, quarterback Joe Flacco, a B grade. Pittsburgh has improved over the past couple of weeks, but prior to that was one of the most porous secondaries in the league. Flacco, even in exploitable matchups, has been largely disappointing, especially when Smith and or Wallace are out of the lineup. Smith looks like he might miss again, depending on whether or not he can return for today's or Friday's practice. We'll keep an eye on it. Wallace is going to be back in the lineup. I like Flacco's chances slightly more if Smith can go, but Wallace is decent enough. Terrence West, a C grade. If the Ravens can keep this game competitive, West will see a decent amount of volume, but the Steelers are a top 12 defense against the run, and when faced with a stout front 7, West has disappointed thus far. Kenneth Dixon, he's on the bench. West is still the lead back in Baltimore. Until that changes, Dixon isn't worth a starting spot this week in a tough matchup. Steve Smith, again, depending on whether or not he plays. If he plays, I'll give him a B grade here. He, step right back into that prior role as Flacco's number 1 target on most passing plays. But again, I'm not holding my breath that he's in the lineup. Mike Wallace, a B grade, 43 targets in his last 4 games. Should continue to see heavy volume in the Ravens passing game against a Steelers defense that has allowed 8 touchdowns to opposing pass catchers on the season. Dennis Pitta, a B-, strictly a volume play.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Pitta's just, he's one of those, he's like a Witten right now. You always wanted to give Pitta the huge bump, but can't be there, man.
I like Witten over Pitta.
Jeez. So a game that's going to end in about 75-10, New Orleans at San Francisco. Drew Brees, I see Brees easily hitting 303 with ease, but I wonder if they will transition quickly from pass into the run, as San Francisco is giving up a league worst. Take a guess on how many yards the San Francisco 49ers give up on the ground per game.
Well, I know how much they give up per carry, so I'm going to say 137.
185.
Holy heck.
Isn't that ridiculous?
Wow, that's a lot.
185 yards per game.
I know it's 5.1 yards per carry.
Yikes.
That's a lot.
So, into the running back situation, we're going to committee stuff back there. I think Ingram's done. If he fumbles one more time, game over. he will never get to start again.
So
I
he's a
guarantee
short
it.
leash guy.
Oh, it's even worse than it's a full-on choker.
I heard a quote-unquote expert today say that Tim Hightower's, 26 rushes for 100-something yards last week wasn't that impressive.
You're an idiot.
He was running against Seattle's front seven.
Yeah.
Granted, Michael Bennett was out of the lineup, but God, give
It
the guy
doesn't
some
matter.
credit. I couldn't believe I was hearing it. I was like, you're supposed to be an expert at this. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, so I'm giving each of them B's because if Ingram's in and he's running, he's not fumbling, they're going to leave him in there. But Hightower's just chomping at the bit, get in there, doing a little voodoo doll, hoping he fumbles it.
Joe Boo.
As a Tim Hightower owner now, I hope Ingram does fumble. Wide receiver Brandon Cooks is going to get an A, Snead B, Thomas B+. I'm going to kind of roll all through of these here pretty quick. Cooks, clear number 1, plenty of speed, action, and ability. 5 touchdowns, 4.7 per catch. Shows why he's the guy week in, week out. Willie Snead, B. You're probably going, what? Snead has 400 through 6 with a pair of touchdowns. Still favorable, but the thing that worries me with Snead is he's losing targets to one Michael Thomas, who's getting a B+ out of me. Michael Thomas has 34 targets in 3 games. 500 yards, which is more than Snead, and 34 of those targets, he's got 31 of them. So Snead is moving down as Thomas continues to make hay with his opportunities. Tight end Colby Fleener going to get a C+. As long as the 3 wide receivers are healthy and playing well, Fleener will continue to be on the low target share. Fleener was running his best routes down the field as a wide receiver, but everyone's healthy and suited up. Onto the 49er side of the ball, their quarterback's going to get a B-. By virtue of playing from behind, he will have to make attempts with his feet and arms. Saints near the bottom of the bucket in terms of passing, so maybe he can get above 200 yards this game. Running back Carlos Hyde's going to get a C. Hyde says he's going to play, but who knows? When a player says, I'm playing, this is going to happen, it's not your decision, pal.
He's back at practice. He was wearing a non-contact jersey early this week, but he's back fully practicing now, so I expect to see him.
Yeah, so let's keep an eye on that, but if he does go, I'm still going to give him a C just because of game flow. He does average about 4 yards per carry and has 6 touchdowns, so Hyde is no slump either. Wide receiver Torrey Smith, you know how this is going to go, a C+. Quentin Patton's going to get a B-. Jeremy Curley's going to get a B-.
Those are high grades for those guys.
Yeah, well, it's going to be volume because if the quarterback throws an interception, it's nothing on the wide receiver. So by virtue of they're going to have to continually throw the ball, they're going to catch some passes. So, I mean, if you B- and you get 60 yards, that's a B- grade.
60 yards, no score?
Yeah, B-.
That's a C+.
Jeez, here we go.
Just being picky. Carolina at Los Angeles. First, the Panthers. Cam Newton an A-. The Rams are a top 12 defense against the pass and the run, but I continue to have faith in the dual threat nature of Newton, who can hurt you both ways, and I believe will this Sunday. Jonathan Stewart, a B grade. The Rams have allowed only 6 rushing scores on the season, but I think the opportunities will be there for Jay Stu, who has run great since he's returned to the field a few weeks ago. Lots of work expected in the running game, 0 in the passing game, but it'll be enough to buoy your running back 2 slot, even if he doesn't reach the end zone. Kelvin Benjamin, a B. I like his chances against the Rams defense that nobody anywhere near his size. Though his touchdowns have been non-existent since week 4, his target share and receiving yards have looked very consistent, very solid. Ted Ginn, a C grade, a dart throw week in and week out. Newton still attempts at least 1 deep ball to him per game. Greg Olsen, an A grade, elite option at the position this week and every week. And for the Rams, quarterback Case Keenum, a C grade. Carolina has allowed the second most passing touchdowns in the league with 16 through the first 8 weeks. Keenum is probably the last guy you should consider in your starting lineup this weekend, but he gets a barely starting grade because the Panthers are pretty awful in the secondary, and the Rams should be playing from behind in this one.
Are you still making a case for Keenum?
Not as much as I was. I really thought he disappointed me the week I wrote that nice column about him, and he screwed it all up.
You should have sent it to him.
I should. Well, I tried to tweet at him. And that is my general rule of thumb is don't tweet at the players, like especially if you're a fantasy person, because that's annoying.
I will say the best time to tweet at players was when they all went on strike.
Oh,
they were so active on
I bet
Twitter.
they were.
I had responses from, this is when Sue was with the Lions.
Wow.
I had responses from Sue. I had responses from Calvin Johnson on my phone. Everything. Because it
All
was
they
awesome
want-
because they were bored and getting their support.
Yep.
They wanted support from fans.
Sitting around on their butts. Absolutely. Running back Todd Gurley, a B-. Another brutally tough matchup this week, facing a Panthers front seven that ranks right up there with Green Bay in terms of yardage allowed. 3.3 yards per carry. Only 5 rushing scores all season. Because of the potential for volume, he's a start, but temper your expectations, which is sadly a recurring theme for Gurley this season. Kenny Britt, a C+, likely to see the majority of Keenum's throws on Sunday. Britt has turned in some decent fantasy-relevant performances in certain matchups. This feels like one of those. Tavon Austin, a C, flex play at best. I will say that 29 targets the past 3 weeks is encouraging. Plus, he's almost always good for at least a couple rushing attempts, too. Lance Kendrick's a C grade, another guy like Austin whose trend is up, but considering the targets he's been seeing the past couple of weeks, but I'm not in love with the option. Brian, it's about that time.
Ooh.
You know what time it is. Yes, you do.
Turtle time?
No. I like titles. The pop quiz is next. 3 of fantasy's toughest questions on 515 Fantasy Football. Stick around. This is the 515 Fantasy Football Show on 1350 AM, ESPN Radio in Des Moines. You can also get our show on iTunes, on Stitcher, and online at espndesmoines.com. I'm Andy Hall. That's Brian Eichenberry. You can find each of us on Twitter. The show's Twitter handle is at 515 Fantasy. I'm at Andy Hall Radio. He is at Ike FFB. That's IKEFFB. And if you are listening to us on iTunes, we would really appreciate if you would take just a couple minutes out of your day while you're listening to the show and rate and review us.
You can literally click yourself right there. Looking at it, you just hit write review and click the stars and say, good job, boys. That's it.
And the more we get, I mean, the more it lets us know that you guys are enjoying what we're doing here, and, you know, hopefully you're succeeding in your endeavors, in your leagues. And also it helps us out because, you know, the more ratings and reviews you get, positive ratings and reviews, you know, more visibility. So
Absolutely.
more people can find us, and that's really ultimately what we would like. So if you would take some time to do that for us on iTunes, we would greatly appreciate it. Well, it's time for everybody's favorite segment, and that is, of course, the pop quiz, where I ask Brian 3 of fantasy's toughest questions. And, of course, he has no prior knowledge. No, you don't. And you have no prior knowledge as to what I'm about to ask. And no matter what comes out of Brian's mouth, I will come back with the correct answer afterwards. And that's just how that works.
It's all perspective, people.
And that's what Brian says. Pop quiz question number 1 this week. Reports are position coach Pat Shurmur, who was instrumental in bringing quarterback Sam Bradford to Minnesota, called the Vikings plays over the first 4 Bradford starts, which resulted in 4 wins and no losses. The last 2 weeks' plays were called by Norv Turner, who led the Vikes to 2 losses and just resigned yesterday. Now that Shurmur is back calling the shots, does Bradford finish the season as a quarterback 2?
I will say no. And you're probably going to say, yes, he will, but I don't think so. That team is not built on a high-scoring, mega-passing offense. To be a QB2, you got to have some pretty stout stats, and he's so far behind at this point anyway, there's no way he can catch up.
The answer is yes.
Of course.
You only have to finish in the top 24 at the quarterback position, which isn't that hard to do considering there's 8 guys behind you, okay? Not that many. If the reports are true, we get the Bradford that averaged 20 fantasy points per week. Even with the stinkers he's turned in the past 2 weeks, he still ranks 21st in fantasy points per game at 17.27. The Vikings get the Lions this week. They're 24th against the pass. Washington in Week 10, they're 19th. Arizona in Week 11, they're 7th. Detroit again Week 12, 24th. Dallas Week 13, 14th. Jacksonville Week 14, 8th. Colts Week 15, 31st. Packers Week 16, 13th. And Chicago, 16th. That should be enough to put him in the top 24 by the end of the season as far as I can tell.
Doubt it.
Did you catch the intel there? The fact that the rumor is Pat Shurmur, who was the guy that pretty much vouched for Sam Bradford and got him to Minnesota, got that deal done, was actually calling Sam Bradford's plays in the first 4 games that he started. Norv Turner, now former offensive coordinator of the Minnesota Vikings,
Yeah, it was just really weird.
took over the play calling duties following the bye. And the Vikings have been 0-2 since. It might actually explain why he decided to resign. What do you think?
I mean, there was probably some struggle, and then he was going to lose the play calling ability. I would assume there would have been a conversation, hey, we're taking it back away. And, that's probably an ego thing at some point. And, now you're no longer calling the plays. I'm sure there's probably lots of discussions we will never understand or never even get a glimpse of.
No, but I think my theory is
Yeah,
probably as
absolutely.
close to the truth as the general public will ever know.
Probably.
Yeah. All right, question 2, since you're now 0 for 1. Pressure's off. You can't go for the 3 for 3, so there you go. Is Saints running back Mark Ingram droppable in leagues of 12 teams or less?
Not yet. If he fumbles one more time, if he fumbles this week, then he will be forever benched. He will be the backup. But not yet. Not yet. Don't get too squirrely.
He's totally droppable.
No.
Averaging only 3.8 yards per carry on the year, 26 targets in 6 games. That's not great. The play calling in New Orleans has been thoroughly confusing this season, especially down near the goal line where seemingly everyone gets to touch the ball except for Ingram, who has only 1 rushing touchdown on the season. Granted, he's got 2 through the air, but only 1 on the ground. The first 2 were back in weeks 3 and 4, by the way. Head coach Sean Payton benched him after losing that fumble early last week. Tim Hightower replaced him, looked pretty dang good doing it, and figures to be a big part of the game plan going forward. Just in time for the league's worst run defense, the 49ers, the Saints' Week 9 opponent. Cleanse yourself of this mess. Let
No.
him be someone else's headache.
Way too early.
Get rid of Mark Ingram.
Nope. Wait for one more fumble. Then you can go.
All right. 0 for 2, Brian. Way to go.
We'll see.
Question number 3. Are any Patriots wide receivers worth rostering?
I'm going to say yes just because. It's Tom freaking Brady. He's going to throw the ball. I like Chris Hogan, but everyone's like, well, Hogan. Look at Hogan's overall numbers last 2 weeks. I'll take Hogan.
The answer is yes, but neither Julian Edelman nor Chris Hogan should be in your starting lineup unless you're absolutely in a dire situation at the position. A victim of injuries or bye weeks, whatever your problem happens to be. Only then would I consider one of the two in a flex spot. Otherwise, neither one are all that valuable week to week, despite the gaudy numbers Tom Brady is capable of putting up. Thank you, Danny Amendola.
Oh, please.
No, I think it's Edelman and Hogan. Roster them. Don't start them. Because you can't count on one or the other week to week. We were just joking about it when we were watching together on Sunday. The fact that I said, Danny Amendola time, this is where everybody goes, nobody owns this guy.
Yeah, I'm rostering, and I would start Hogan. I mean, obviously I wouldn't start him unless I had to.
In a flex, though, right? He wouldn't be in like a regular wide receiver slot.
Yeah, it'd be a flex.
And, regarding Hogan, I've been on the Hogan bandwagon pretty much all season long. Even before Brady came back from suspension, I said, hey, Brady's coming back here very soon. This is a guy you're going to want to keep an eye on. I didn't realize what a great deep threat that Chris Hogan could be.
Yeah, pretty crazy.
That's pretty much what he is in that Patriots offense. Won't mean a whole lot of target volume, but if he does hit, and Brady, nobody's been more accurate this year than Brady. Have you seen his numbers?
He is literally playing the best football of his life right now.
Yeah, and he's not even doing it like...
And he's 39.
It's insane, isn't it?
He is. It's got to be his wife, right? Keeping him youthful, bountiful.
I always said that about musicians, rock stars that marry or date young girls that are like 20, 30, 40 years younger
Here's the
than
thing,
them.
though. Brady doesn't even wear the pants in that family. She makes more money than he does.
Giselle.
Yeah. So pressure's off for him.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. So you went 1 for 3 this week.
2 for 3.
You went 1 for 3.
And Brantford, no, I'm pretty sure it was 3.
Got a little bit of time here, Brian. Do you want to throw any questions at me while we're at it? I gave you the opportunity last week. I might as well give you a chance again this week with the BYE-Pocalypse Part 2 happening. Electric Boogaloo, by the way.
Well, we could talk about our delay in recording. I mean, if we were hoping to bring some, fun news in, that other sport that's being played right now while we're recording?
No.
No.
I don't want to talk about
No.
that.
Aw.
I don't.
I don't have any questions. You kind of sprung this on me. We did not time this one out well, did we?
Nope, not at all.
How much time we got left?
2 minutes.
2 minutes. Ooh, we could do a pre-flea flicker right now.
You want to? See, we could do a little tease for the flea flicker probably. Normally we wrap the show up with the flea flicker.
We can do a twofer. We can do 2 flea flickers.
You think?
Yeah.
Wouldn't screw you up too bad, huh?
Did you tell any jokes? Did your kids tell any jokes for their Halloween
Do we really
trick-or-treating?
want to follow this up? Okay, so I had to whisper in my 6-year-old son's ear a really corny joke because there was that one guy that is just totally all about the jokes. And it's like so much so that it gets annoying. You know how it is? If there's somebody that's holding up a line, all you're waiting for is just a little piece of candy for your kid, and you're standing in a line of kids, and this person is, he's got all these kids trying to tell jokes, and it takes forever. At some point, you just got to, cut the cord
Cycle
on
them
it,
through.
right? And just, or just move on to the next house.
Yeah.
Don't you think? I mean, I don't know if this is a phenomenon anywhere else in the country, but here in central Iowa, for some reason, this joke thing is kind of a big deal, I guess, and I'm totally annoyed by it. I'm totally over it, and can't stand people that make my kids stand there and tell a joke to get a piece of candy.
I did have one vent on Halloween. There was this house. These guys were super excited for Halloween. It was an older couple. They had all these gadgets and gizmos and theatrics, and they had this one witch hologram where she was realistic, and my four-year-old was terrified. And they're like, well, if he's scared of that, don't look at the window. In the window, they had one of those poltergeist ones.
Oh.
And it was like, what are you doing? Like, you were scaring 5-year-olds. And yeah, of course, nightmares ensued.
It's not just your kid. It's
Terrible.
you, too. You had nightmares.
Yeah, I was
too.
terrified.
The parents are running away screaming, too. Brian and I are going to dive back into the matchups here shortly. We also have a mailbag segment for our listeners upcoming as well on the 515 Fantasy Football Show, 1350 AM ESPN Radio. Thank you for listening. This is the 515 Fantasy Football Show on 1350 AM ESPN Radio in Des Moines, also on iTunes, on Stitcher, and online at espndesmoines.com. Andy Hall, Brian Eikenberry back with the rest of the matchups from Week 9. Brian?
All right, we're going to kick it off this segment with the Colts-Packers. Quarterback Andrew Luck is going to get a B+. Much of his production relies on T.Y. Hilton being healthy, but the Packers are an average pass defense that can be exploited for large gains. Luck has the ability to do so as long as he has the weapons. Running back Frank Gore, he's going to get a B-. The old GOAT is going to meet his match this week and will be held to a very low amount. If you have options, don't start Gore. Packers are second against the run, giving up less than 80 yards per game. If he scores, it's likely going to be a dump pass in which he has scored 3 times from. Wide receiver T.Y. Hilton, B-. He has not officially been ruled in or out for the game. He did not practice on Wednesday. Watch his injury report Friday morning or even Sunday morning. See if he makes the trip, how's it going. Watch it. He could play. My guess is Friday will be the most important day to see if he does play. Wide receiver Dante Moncrief, B+. I like the Pokey Moncrief play this week as much as I did last week. I was saying start him. He catches the ball like Ash catches Pikachu. Wide receiver Philip Dorsett's going to get a C. Could be a surprise player, but Gore will have to get the ball rolling for Dorsett to be effective and have an impact, as a linebacker will be dropping back into coverage. If Gore is doing good, that'll force that linebacker to drop towards the line and let Dorsett grab those balls underneath the secondary coverage. The tight end situation, Jack Doyle, Dwayne Allen, whatever's going to happen, I'm going to give the tight ends a B here, especially if T.Y. Hilton doesn't go. They're going to need all hands on deck to get the job done in the passing game. It's not going to be done in the running game. The 2 tight ends have 5 touchdowns and 500 yards total.
I think Doyle's a great play this week.
Yeah, absolutely. Quarterback Aaron Rodgers, nobody to run the ball here except for Rodgers himself, so he is probably going to be involved in about 90% of all offensive production this week. So Rodgers has 19 total touchdowns, may add 3 or 4 this week against Indy's 31st pass defense. Running back Don Jackson, is that who we're going with in Green Bay?
It's tough to say. I mean, Montgomery has been dealing with the sickle cell trait, and you've got Cobb is no sure bet to play this week. So,
Who
Don
knows?
Jackson might just be like the last man standing back there, and he was a former practice squad guy.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So either way, I'm going to give a B- to whoever starts back there. They're all emergency backups for a reason. Even though the Colts have the 21st run defense, I can't get behind a confident start, especially if you're making a playoff push in your fantasy football roster. Jordy Nelson, he's going to get a B. Low on the yardage pool with 400, but it has a team high of 6 touchdowns. Wide receiver 2 at this point, but I like his matchups. Cobb, we don't know if he's going. He was limited on Wednesday. Less than 10 yards per catch and 2 touchdowns. Not producing compared to where he was drafted in your fantasy football league. Wide receiver Devontae Adams, though, he's getting an A. More yards than Jordy, draws lesser coverage. So I like Adams as the best wide receiver option on the Packers this week. He only averages 10 yards per catch, but his volume is working in his favor, especially if Cobb plays.
Tennessee at San Diego. First, the Titans. Quarterback Marcus Mariota, a B+ this week. The Chargers have given up the 5th most passing yards to opposing quarterbacks and 11 passing scores. Mariota may have a more difficult task when he runs the ball, though, as San Diego are tough against opposing runners. DeMarco Murray, a B grade. No way I'm betting against fantasy's number 2 scoring running back. The Chargers may be a top 10 defense against the run, giving up only 3.8 yards per carry through Week 8, but they have allowed 11 touchdowns on the ground, which bodes well for Murray and the volume we expect to see from him on Sunday afternoon. Side note, keeping a very close eye on that toe, because apparently that is what ailed him late last week, and therefore we saw a bunch of Derrick Henry who could mix into this game as well. I'm only giving him a C grade, though. Virtually no field time unless the Titans are up big, as they were last Thursday night against the Jags. Otherwise, it's all Murray all the time. Kendall Wright, a B grade. His usage since he returned to the field in Week 4 has been very inconsistent, but when it's been good, it's been great. This is definitely an exploitable matchup. Wright should see 7 to 10 targets here, which in the past has been good for business. Rashard Matthews, I'll give a C+ to. 3 touchdowns in his last 4 games, but the target totals nor his yardage totals have been very impressive. Delaney Walker, a B+, continues to be one of the most underrated tight ends in all of fantasy football.
How?
How?
How are people underrating him?
How is he not underrated? He's consistently a top 5 tight end, and he's never taken as such in drafts.
That's what's incredible is you clearly don't listen to the show.
And the Chargers, not this show because I'm a huge Delaney Walker fan. Chargers time. Quarterback Phillip Rivers, a B+, facing a Titan secondary that ranks 25th in yards allowed to opposing quarterbacks. Rivers will benefit from a game script that should call for lots of passing, considering Tennessee is a top 10 unit against the run. Melvin Gordon, a C+, 4 yards per carry, only 3 touchdowns allowed on the ground all season by his opponent this week. Tough matchup for Gordon. You would be wise to temper your expectations this week. Tyrell Williams, B+. Take away his 2 stinkers against Denver in weeks 6 and 8, and Williams' weekly output looks an awful lot like a very consistent wide receiver 2. Had 12 receptions for 257 yards and a score in weeks 5 and 7. Dontrell Inman is in play, a C+. Aside from his week 4 explosion against the Saints, very pedestrian. Worse, hasn't been in the end zone since. But Travis Benjamin is not going to play this week, is my guess. And so Dontrell Inman is in play here. Hunter Henry, I'll give a B grade to, although he's splitting targets with Gates. It's Henry that possesses the greater upside on a week-to-week basis. Gates gets a B-. He scored in each of his last 3 games against the Titans, dating back to 2009. Can't argue with the Chargers' desire to get him the tight end scoring record. It helps your fantasy squad.
All right, let's do this Broncos-Raiders here. For the division, who would have thought at this late in the season the Broncos and the Raiders were going to be battling it out for lead? Crazy, right? Quarterback Trevor Siemian, as we heard in the headlines, he is on a very, very, very short leash. Is this a start where he claims his spot once again? The Raiders are trending upward, playing a little bit defense, a little bit better, so I'm not expecting Siemian to go break out. He's averaging 1 TD a game with 4 interceptions, so he's going to have to play a ton better. I'm not in on Siemian at all. Running back situation, is it going to be Booker? Is Capri Bibbs going to go? What's happening here?
Well, I think Booker's okay.
Yeah, I think Booker's okay too. B+, questionable with the shoulder. I'm nervous about the re-injury. I've talked about it before, but he's going to get plenty of touches. try to lean away so it could limit his yards after contact, but with 4 yards per carry, he should be just fine. Wide receiver Demaryius Thomas, B-. Through 8, he has 535 with 4 touchdowns with 12 yards per catch. So obviously not stellar, but it's all in the QB play. It's not him. And you knew that heading into draft day, so that's why he wasn't up there on the top of my board, just because of the QB situation. Expect some screens in his favor with praying for a breakout. I believe the wide receiver to own is Emmanuel Sanders, B. I like Sanders. I've been trying to snag him in leagues, but owners are having a tight grip in the trade market, as they should. He is the guy to own as the route tree favors Simeon's play. He has more yards than Thomas, and that's with his horrendous start. Remember, like week 2, people were like, oh my God, Sanders is done. He's toast. I just had to get a little settled in. He averages 12.9 yards per catch. Onto the Raiders side of the ball, quarterback Derek Carr, after a stud week last week, I'm only going to give him a B. He has 2,300 yards, 17 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, but this is going to be his toughest challenge. Good thing he's at home for that toughest challenge. The Broncos give up 183 yards passing per game, which is funny because the 49ers give up more rushing yards than the Broncos do in the passing game. Someone I do have confidence in on the Raiders side this week, running back Latavius Murray. I'm going to give him an A, and here's why. He's going to go bonkers. He's going to have 2 touchdowns this game. He is not going to have the yards. He might have 50 yards, but he's going to have 2 touchdowns.
Interesting call.
Guarantee it. So not going to be the yards play, going to be the touchdown play. Amari Cooper, B-. I think Cooper is going to have an absolutely terrible game here. He is bad against good corners and is going to draw Talib, so brace yourself for a low score coming from Amari Cooper, especially not going to get the touchdown. Someone who will, Michael Crabtree, B. Decent game, but it won't be great. Still loaded with 6 touchdowns on his roster. Not to mention he's just about 100 yards short of Cooper even after his massive game. So I do like Crabtree more than Cooper here. I've always liked Crabtree this year. And,
they're both great, but I tell you what, Chris Harris is no joke on the other side of the field.
I know.
From Talib.
Something's
I know
gotta
you
break,
talk about Talib a lot, but Chris Harris he's great.
Something's got to break. Someone you could snag, Seth Roberts, though.
There
Watch
you go.
out for him.
Always a target down in the red zone. Buffalo at Seattle. This will do it for the matchups. We'll begin with the Bills, and this will be quick. Tyrod Taylor, a C+. Fantasy's number 10 scoring quarterback, perhaps the king of garbage time in 2016. I don't expect much production, if any, early on in this game, but where Taylor shines is when his team is down multiple scores and defense relaxes. I'd steer clear of this matchup against football's 9th best pass defense that has only allowed 5 touchdowns and picked off 5 enemy passes. But if you must start him due to bye weeks or whatever, tune in late to see your quarterback do something productive. LaShawn McCoy, a B grade. If Shady plays this week, it's nearly impossible to sit him, considering the volume he's sure to see both on the ground and via the air, even against Seattle's top 5 unit against the run. But whereas you'd normally consider him a mid-tier running back 1 or a high-end running back 2, he's more like a flex play this week. Mike Gillislee, I'm leaving on the bench if McCoy plays. McCoy inactive, Gillislee no better than a C grade in my opinion. No pass catchers worth the start this week. They're all on my bench. Over to the Seahawks, Russell Wilson, a B-. Faced Buffalo 4 years ago, threw for 205 yards and a score, but also chipped in 92 yards rushing. And Brian, 3 scores with his feet. That won't happen this time around, considering Wilson's variety of injuries and the fact that he's not scrambling at all in 2016. Bills are a decent pass defense, allowing 242 through the air per game on average, but have an 8-6 touchdown to INT ratio, which doesn't scream fantasy gold to me. Christine Michael, one of my favorite plays of the week at the running back position. He gets an A grade. Doug Baldwin, a B- at best. Jermaine Kearse, maybe a dart throw C. Tyler Lockett, I'm leaving on the bench. And Jimmy Graham, a B. Though the Bills tend to be very good against opposing tight ends, Graham should see a decent amount of targets in the passing game. Well, that's it for the matchups. Now we move on to the fun part, Brian. Mailbag segment is next, and then our bargain bin picks as well on the 515 Fantasy Football Show. You are hearing it on 1350 AM, ESPN Radio, Des Moines, Iowa. This is the 515 Fantasy Football Show, heard each and every Thursday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. on 1350 AM, ESPN Radio in Des Moines, Iowa, the radio home for the Chicago Cubs, the world champions of baseball. First time since 1908, Brian.
Unbelievable.
It really was an excellent series overall, and that Game 7, man, was that amazing.
Way too late.
Way too late, but what a great game.
Up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. I didn't have a dog in the fight, so
Yeah.
I was okay.
Just happy for Cubs Nation. Finally got their World Series championship. First since 1908, as I said, and we're happy to be on the radio home of the Chicago Cubs here. We're also on iTunes, on Stitcher, and online at espndesmoines.com, by the way. With the BYE-Pocalypse Part 2 Electric Boogaloo this week, had an open segment, decided to open up to some questions. So you've got questions, we've got answers. I'm Andy Hall, that's Brian Eikenberry. We begin on Twitter from @Wilson27. What is the current market value for a guy like DeAndre Hopkins, Brian?
Mid. I wouldn't get carried away. I wouldn't hold on to your draft value by any means. And that's the biggest stick, is convincing people because you drafted him that high doesn't mean he's worth that much.
Yeah, especially a guy like that who's dealing with a subpar quarterback in a system that's not entirely friendly to wide receivers of his type. In my opinion, you're selling low, which is a strategy I don't endorse. But if you're set on dealing him, I'd say fair market value is, I don't know, somebody else who's underachieving.
Yeah, a mid-tier running back. I mean,
Frank Gore.
Yeah, I don't understand why people, especially I hate it when I see trades 1-for-1 trades for wide receiver. It's like, what
that
are
makes
you doing?
no sense. Yeah.
What are you doing?
No.
So yeah, I mean, a mid-tier running back, someone who's not knocking out of the park, obviously, but yeah, someone like a Frank Gore,
Carlos Hyde, maybe in a bad offense.
I mean, that's probably a little too low for me, but I don't know.
All right. Moving on, this one on Twitter from @RobNauman. Better long-term investment, Antone Smith or Charkandrick West?
That's a tough question. I'll say Anton Smith, just because I don't think Spencer Ware's there. Charkandrick West is good for a week, maybe two, depending on how long that concussion goes. Other than that, he's done.
Yeah, I mean, there's even talk that Spencer Ware might be back in the lineup this week. It's highly doubtful, but
I hope not. I just need him to be out for 1 week.
Yeah, well, that's looking like the most likely scenario here. Since he threw in the words long-term investment, I tend to agree with you, Brian, that Antone Smith is actually probably the better long-term investment here, considering we still have no timeline as to when Doug Martin's going to return to that lineup, and Jacquizz Rodgers, now that he's banged up.
Yeah, who knows what's going to happen with that ankle.
This is the NFL, Brian. People are given opportunities every single week in this league, and sometimes guys lose their jobs because they got hurt.
Freeman ring a bell?
I mean, listen, it happens. So, yeah, that's my answer here as well, although I really like Charkandrick West this week. So, from @second James Brown, which handcuffs would you consider the best stashes? Teams are at this point looking likely to make their fantasy playoffs, Brian, and they're wanting to bolster their lineup and secure some handcuffs that they didn't back in draft time back in August. So who are your favorites off the top of your head?
Off the top of my head, well, we just talked about Anton Smith and Charkandrick West. Anybody who, I mean, obviously, I would just start going down in depth charts.
Yeah.
And
if you're a David Johnson owner, you want to own Andre Ellington. If you're an Ezekiel Elliott owner, you're going to want Alfred Morris.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're a DeMarco Murray owner, you're grabbing Derrick Henry. If you're a Le'Veon Bell owner, you probably already have D'Angelo Williams.
If you're a Gronk owner, grab Martellus Bennett.
Actually, yes. I mean, isn't that funny? Like, you think handcuffs, you think running back most of the time.
Applies.
But in the case of the tight end, and we've talked about this now 3 times, it's actually a viable handcuff. Gronkowski, Bennett. Absolutely correct. So, yeah, a few others off the top of my head. Bilal Powell, Matt Forte. If something happens to him, it'll be all Powell all the time. In Carolina, with Jonathan Stewart out, that's when Cameron Artis-Payne gets the opportunities. So he's a guy you might take a look at if you're a J-Stu owner. If you're a Todd Gurley owner, are you even bound for the playoffs this year, do you think, Brian?
Well, probably not, but I wouldn't worry about Todd Gurley.
Benny Cunningham.
No thanks.
And then, of course, there's the Seattle situation, which, Christine Michael's got a lock on for now. But what happens if something happens to Christine Michael?
Yeah.
Thomas Rawls is coming back here in a week or two.
Yeah, absolutely. He's someone that's on my watch list right now of, dropping that extra defense that you held on to and snagging Thomas Rawls, stuff like that.
Very good question from second James Brown. This one from Wallace Andy 79 is McKinnon droppable. Have David Johnson, Frank Gore, and Christine Michael as my other running backs. Need to create room for some bye week replacements.
Try and trade him. Trade him for a bye week replacement.
Yeah, but it's tough because he didn't play last week, so there's really nothing to go off of. And I mean, Minnesota's offense.
Well, your bye week replacement would mean that you would be going to pick up a wide receiver off the waiver wire, which means there are probably none. If you're in a 12-team league, you're looking at an Adam Humphries, stuff like that.
Maybe
so,
a Quincy Enunwa if he's still out there.
I can't imagine Enunwa's out there anywhere, but I would try and trade. If you think there's a possibility, don't drop. Always try a trade first, but don't get stuck on value. Go to someone's roster and pick a low wide receiver, because if they're on that person's roster, they're better than what's in the waiver wire. So, trade.
I say drop him outright. That's just me.
You're weird.
From at Bro W Hood, PPR League in need of big points. Who is the best play this week, Brian? Quincy Enunwa, Mohamed Sanu, Tavon Austin, or Michael Thomas?
Enunwa. I covered that in my matchup. Brandon Marshall's getting doubled and sometimes tripled. Teams are just saying, okay, you beat us with Fitz and Enunwa. We'll take out Marshall. So I like Enunwa.
Yeah, Enunwa's not a bad option. I would probably rank him second on this list. I think Michael Thomas is the guy that's been most consistent of the group.
Yeah.
And though he's a rookie, and rookies are typically boom or bust, this guy,
he's been a stud.
He is looking great. And, you were talking about the dynamic of that New Orleans offense a while back in your matchup. And the way it works is you have Cooks and you have Thomas are the two outside receivers. Snead is almost always out of the slot. So there were those weeks there where Snead had the toe injury, and that's when you saw Kobe Fleener pick it up.
Yep.
But when Snead's in the lineup, Fleener is kind of a non-factor, yeah, and Snead is the guy running out of the slot. So again, Thomas and Cooks are the outside guys more often, and that's just kind of how that offense works out, probably 99.9% of the time. So my opinion is Michael Thomas if you need big points. Quincy Enunwa, I'm certainly comfortable with that too, especially in a PPR league, because I think he'll be targeted a lot. This one from at Twins Trader. Need to create space for a D on bye week. Who is least valuable going forward, Rob Kelly or Jacquizz Rodgers?
Rob Kelly.
I would agree completely on this. I think Washington is pass heavy. I think they're not looking to run the ball much anymore. We saw what happened to Matt Jones, and I was never a fan of his.
And Jacquizz Rodgers was a jackpot.
Yeah.
Jackpot.
Till he got banged up. But, yeah, the heavy volume.
He might be back in a week.
I mean, any guy has the potential to get 30 touches plus in a game is amazing. Yeah, I wouldn't let go of him for sure. So Rob Kelly is an easy answer there. This one via the SleeperBot app. This one's from a guy whose handle is The Maverick. Should I trade Jordan Matthews or Stephon Diggs for Isaiah Crowell?
Stephon Diggs.
I say trade Jordan Matthews.
Really?
Yeah. You got a rookie quarterback tossing the ball there in Philadelphia. You got a
but
team.
they're more up-tempo. You're stuck on the Vikings, whatever.
I think Stephon Diggs is worthy of a roster spot.
I think Matthews is more the even keel point total, where Stephon Diggs can go 20 and then 2 and then 20 and then 2.
I guess, this kind of comes down to our differences in how we look at the Vikings as a whole, and it could just be this week because your Lions are playing my Vikings. But I'm seeing this as now that Pat Shurmur's taken over as the interim offensive coordinator, he's going to be calling plays. He knows Sam Bradford better than anybody. He's going to put Sam Bradford in the best possible position. So I think Sam Bradford is going to have a great rest of the season. In fact, I predicted he will finish as a quarterback 2. And Stephon Diggs, I mean, aside from Cordero Patterson on screens once in a while, there really isn't anybody else in that wide receiver core that I'm excited about.
I worry about that offensive line. It's shown some major, major issues in 2 weeks in a row.
You know what I think they should do, and one of my friends up in the Twin Cities came up with this concept. Do a 2 tight end set that's like your base set, and you have Kyle Rudolph on one side and Cordero Patterson on the other. Patterson can block. He likes to hit people. And then you just let him release every once in a while, and he's like a nice, easy toss for Sam Bradford. Quick 3-step drop. Boom. Cordero Patterson.
Maybe you should send it into the Vikings Twitter account.
I think I Well, it's not me, but my friend might be onto something. Of course, he might be on something. I'm just getting it confused.
That could be.
If you're in need of a dart throw at the quarterback, the running back, or any pass catcher position, Brian and I have just the segment for you. The bargain bins are coming right up, and we'll wrap up with that 515 Fantasy Flea Flicker as well on the 515 Fantasy Football Show. Stick around. Final segment of this week's 515 Fantasy Football Show, heard on 1350 AM ESPN Radio, Des Moines, Iowa. Also on iTunes, on Stitcher, and online at espndesmoines.com. Again, I'm Andy Hall. That's Brian Eikenberry. Between us, over 40 years of fantasy football dominance. And back at it here for week number 9 of the 2016 season. You can find us on Facebook, 515 Fantasy Football, on Twitter, at 515 Fantasy. I'm at Andy Hall Radio. He's at Ike FFB. That's IKEFFB. The bargain bin segment, Brian, where each of us pick out one quarterback, one running back, and one pass catcher that chances are available on our listeners' waiver wires right now. And you can just go plug into your lineup, and expect a decent amount of fantasy production from. Some of these guys could be saviors. You just never know week to week.
You betcha.
But we do the research and try to give you the best we can. And at the quarterback position, who's your bargain bin pick?
Dak Prescott. Look, a lot of people have dropped him, as long as you're not in some kind of a dynasty. A lot of people have dropped him weeks ago. Dez is back. Look what happened. Dez got him an extra 119 yards and a touchdown. All those people who were like, you can't throw the deep ball, myself included, all of a sudden went, whoops. And now Dak Prescott is looking like a viable option, especially during this bye-week stretch of 9 and 10.
A player that I guarantee you will never pick up, Brian, is Colin Kaepernick.
You betcha.
San Francisco 49ers. He's my bargain bin quarterback this week, owned in 7% of Yahoo fantasy leagues. Try not to look at his completion percentages in the first 2 starts. Instead, focus on the fact that he's averaging nearly 9 rushing attempts per game for 75 yards. Gets a Saints defense this week that has allowed the most rushing scores in the league at 12. I think Cap continues his pace of throwing at least one passing touchdown in this one, but may also find success via the ground and help you out this week if you need it. Who's your running back?
I was yawning. Sorry. My running back is Tim Hightower. Look, let's face it. A lot of people are not pulling the trigger on Hightower because they assume Mark Ingram's just going to step right back into the role and be just fine. But we were talking about important handcuffs in the last segment. Tim Hightower is it. One fumble, he's going to go forever.
Yeah, I mean, he was going to be my pick as well. I mean, he's facing the Niners this week. They allow over 5 yards per carry. They've given up 10 scores to opposing runners on the season. But I think I'm going to pull a switcheroo and go Antone Smith now that I think I have this Tampa running back situation figured out.
Got the conundrum solved?
It's the revenge factor, Brian.
Ooh.
Antone Smith, who is a former Atlanta Falcon, by the way. Falcons are not a very good run defense. And Antone Smith, I think, figures to see more of the running back touches than Peyton Barber, who's a very talented runner. But I think Smith is the guy that proved for many years there in Atlanta that he's capable of hitting a home run on any given touch. So I like Smith. How about your pass catcher?
Philip Dorsett. Look, a lot of people moved on from Dorsett once T.Y. Hilton started to pick up steam, and he just wasn't that active. Well, he wasn't active when Moncrief and Hilton were out there together. That's where Dorsett's value is. So I say you need to snag Philip Dorsett. Maybe not this week, but for sure next week when T.Y. Hilton's back.
I have 2 options for our listeners this week at the pass catcher
Ooh,
positions.
look at
I
you,
like them
Mr.
both.
Fancy pants.
One of them I like as like a conservative, easy answer, and that's Dontrell Inman of San Diego, owned in 3% of Yahoo fantasy leagues. Inman shines when Travis Benjamin is ineffective, or as is the case here in Week 9, likely to miss time. In Week 4 against the Saints' 19th ranked pass defense, Inman caught 7 of 11 targets for 120 yards and a touchdown. This week, the Chargers get the league's 26th ranked pass defense, the Titans. So yes, Dontrell Inman is in play for me. The other one, nobody owns, Brian. 0% ownership in Yahoo fantasy leagues.
And it's a pass catcher?
It is. Can you guess as to who it might be?
No.
Cecil Shorts.
Oh, my goodness.
Shorts should see the field quite a bit in tonight's game, considering Russell Shepard got a little nicked up last weekend and the Bucs lost to Oakland. Doesn't look likely to play tonight. It's a long shot, no doubt, but Shorts has the touchdown potential where I don't really see that for the slot guy, Adam Humphries. The Falcons have given up the second most yards to opposing pass catchers and are tied for the most touchdowns allowed with 19 on the season. Cecil Shorts. Remember him?
Freaking Shorts.
Yeah. So, Fantasy Flea Flicker. That's how we're going to wrap up this week's show, as we have been doing for the past several weeks. This is Brian's idea. We have about 5.5 minutes to kill, Brian. What sorts of randomness would you like to talk about in these 5.5 minutes?
I don't know about you, but I'm kind of a nerd at some point, and I am looking forward to...
Are you kidding? I'm king nerd.
BlizzCon that's coming up here. There's going to be some new Diablo news, so I'm pretty excited. I'm hoping for a Diablo 2 HD remake.
That's very cool, man. We hung out last Sunday.
Yeah.
You and I.
Yes.
I came to your house, which is a beautiful new house. Had a great time, except for the fact that you were pretty much mute the entire
I was so pissed.
Listen, you have friends over.
So pissed.
And I'm starting to wonder as I'm sitting there, like, what did I do wrong? Is he mad at me for something? I guess I should have offered to bring something over.
No.
I was that guy.
No.
I just ate all your food.
No.
But, like, I don't know. It just seemed to me like you were perturbed, and it was because of your fantasy teams. They were crapping the bed.
Last Sunday was in the first 15 minutes of football action, I knew I had lost both leagues instantly.
That quickly.
And I was sitting at 5-2. I'm like, this is good. 15 minutes, and I'm like, I'm done. I'm done. This week is gone. I'm done. I had a little bit of a headache from some sinuses, and I was so pissed. And that's the thing, is fantasy football ruins my day. And I can walk upstairs. My wife's like, you lost.
Yeah, she can tell.
Yeah, you can tell. So then she's mad because I'm mad, and I'm not getting out of my funk. There's nothing that's bringing me out.
No, I know.
If I lose both leagues plus the Lions lose, like, Sunday's over. And then The Walking Dead sucked, which that made me even more mad.
Yeah.
And it just went on.
A lot of people disappointed in The Walking Dead right now. But
Yeah,
they're gonna keep watching.
Hey, if you don't know this, I have a Walking Dead podcast. It's called Biters out there on iTunes and Stitcher. So I have a Walking Dead podcast, which is kind of fun. I like doing that.
Yeah, Brian is a real geek, by the way, and that's why he and I get along so well. I think is because we're both geeks about lots of different things.
Yeah, it's nerdy. I'm pretty upset about the new MacBook Pro that just came out. Got announced, and it's super expensive.
Yeah, well,
so
I mean that's why
you're
upset, because it's expensive.
Yeah,
because otherwise it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I could care less. I mean, they're jacking out the old school ports and the SD card slots. I don't care about any of that junk. Good. Let's modernize it. Let's make it more efficient. Let's leaps and bounds of technology here. Let's do this.
That touch bar is pretty awesome.
It's pretty expensive too.
I mean, wow. Yeah, but wouldn't let my kids around that, no question.
So if the Apple Store wants to go ahead and sponsor us, I would be more than willing to take a new MacBook.
Putting the call out there right now.
Do it.
Yeah, Apple, come talk to me. Come to Butthead.
Come to Butthead.
Congrats again to the Chicago Cubs and Cubs Nation as well, who have been dealing with, I don't know, futility their entire lives. This is the equivalent of the Vikings winning a Super Bowl, Brian.
So
the Cubs have been a cursed franchise for so long. 1908 was their last World Series championship.
Yeah, so being a Lions fan, I liked that because someone would give me crap about being a Lions fan. I'd be like, are you a Cubs fan? Because here in Iowa, pretty much everyone's a Cubs fan. I'm like,
True.
you a Cubs fan? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, then you have nothing to talk about. Be quiet.
Because the Cubs were the team that had the longest streak of futility in terms of championships.
Yeah.
Now it's the Lions.
Now I'm pretty sure it's the Lions.
Even
so
worse than the Vikings.
Well, I lost that argument now, so now I'm out.
I always said that the Vikings are like the Cubs of the NFL, essentially. Like the fan bases have just been so beat down over time. Like you've had your opportunities, you've been in the sunshine, but it didn't last long.
And ticket prices keep going up. I don't understand how that works.
God, I'm telling you. I so badly I want to check out the U.S. Bank Stadium, but so far the only chance I've gotten is to see Metallica.
To see a concert.
Which I am not complaining about, by the way, because that was awesome. But, yeah, the new album, by the way, is coming out soon from Metallica.
November 18th.
That's right. Hardwired to Self-Destruct.
Doctor Strange comes out this Friday.
You know, those of you that listen to me on Laser 103.3, our sister station, you know I'm a huge Metallica freak, so I'm, always looking forward to that.
I'm pretty excited.
Brian is equally as excited as I.
Very much.
No question. And then you have a new arrival coming.
Yes, on Friday as well. So Doctor Strange is coming out. I'm not going to be able to see it opening weekend. Baby girl Layla Ray is coming, so
Congratulations ahead of time.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Blessings
that'll
to
be fun.
you and your wife and your son. And, this is a, growing family. It reminds me of me about 5 years ago.
Yeah. So it's I don't sleep now anyways, so I'm
Nope.
already up to speed for that.
That's absolutely true. I can attest. Brian is not a guy that gets a lot of sleep, and nor do I for that matter. And you know what? Sleeping is
Plenty of time to
basically
do
just-
it when I'm dead.
Yeah, you're killing time at that point. So, I'm probably going to, I like to crash when I crash, but
Hey, when others sleep, I grind.
I like to be productive every once in a while, too. Right, Brian, that was a good time, man. Week 9 in the
Woo!
books.
Done.
Good luck to everybody this week. Thank you so much again for listening. We invite you to rate and review us on iTunes. We invite you to hit us up anytime on the Facebook page, on Twitter. You can email us, 515fantasy@gmail.com, whatever you like, man.
Send gift cards.
Yeah, send us stuff. We like free stuff. For Brian Eikenberry, I'm Andy Hall. This is the 515 Fantasy Football Show on 1350 AM ESPN Radio. Good luck this week.